All right. Call to order this session of the King George County Planning Commission. We have a quorum, and if we would rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you, dear Lord, for allowing us to gather in this place, dear Lord, in the one union, dear Lord. We ask that you guide our hearts and minds as we go about the county's business, making sure that we are clear in our thoughts and pure in our hearts as we go about this for all of our citizens within the county. These and other blessings we pray. Amen.
Do you have any public hearing? I'm sorry, public comment. Mr. Dines online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll close public hearing. A comment, I did that twice. Approval of minutes for April and May.
I have no comments, Mr. Chair.
So we'll just do it one at a time. All right, motion for April meeting minutes.
Make the motion, we approve the meeting minutes from the April meeting of the King George County Planning Commission.
Second it.
All in favor? Abstain?
Abstention?
Yeah.
I'm going to abstain from that one. I left early that night.
All right, now May 9th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the 9 May 2023 King George County Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Abstentions?
Stay.
3 abstentions.
Mhm.
All right.
We're going directly into plan review. Oh, maybe liaison. I'll get that after this.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Louis Pancati, Senior Planner, and I'll be presenting case number Z 2023-00720. This is a request by AVI Investment 14 LLC for an exception from the requirements of Section 10.4.3 landscaping per Section 10.3D of the King George County Zoning Ordinance for the construction of a drive-through stacking lane and a portion of the parking lot within the 25-foot landscape buffer. This is tax map 24, parcel 9C. The proposed lot is 0.4937 acres, and it's zoned C2. The proposed parcel will front on Kings Highway or State Route 3 per Article 10. Route 3 is part of the Highway Corridor Overlay District, or the HCOD. Currently, the parcel contains a building that is part of the McDaniel's Car Wash. The applicant proposes a boundary line adjustment that will put the car wash on one parcel and the proposed fast food restaurant on another parcel. The parcel does contain several existing easements that will need to be vacated for the proposed development to take place. This will involve consent from the property owners with rights that have existing rights to use those easements. You can see the front here has a 35-foot easement on it that runs up the side as well, and then there's also an access easement on this side of the property. And this is the existing boundary line. The boundary line adjustment will move it down to here so that both car wash buildings are on one, and then the proposed Dunkin' Donuts will be on the smaller half-acre parcel. Section 10.3 landscaping requires a 10-foot landscaping buffer along any property line that abuts a right-of-way of any HCOD roadway. Within this buffer, this section requires one tree for each 40 linear feet of the landscaping strip, and a minimum of 3 shrubs with a maximum height of 2 1/2 feet shall be randomly planted between each tree. Furthermore, the planting specifications must conform to the standards in section 7.6 of the King George County zoning ordinance. The applicant is proposing an encroachment into this buffer with a drive-through window stacking lane and a portion of the parking lot as shown. Here's the portion of the parking lot and then the stacking lane that's in the buffer. This line represents the 25-foot required landscape buffer.
No.
The development will encroach about 7.5 or 7.6 feet into the buffer across the entire front of the parcel. The applicant believes that the exception is necessary due to the physical size of the lot. Additional landscaping has been proposed in the buffer, and the applicant the applicant notes that there's an additional 22 feet between or strip of land between the curb of Kings Highway and the actual front of the property line, shown here. Section 10.3D of the zoning ordinance allows the Planning Commission to grant exceptions to the development, access, and sign standards of the HCOD requirements. An exception may be granted if the Planning Commission makes the following findings. The applicant has also provided responses to these 6 criteria. One is that the exception is reasonably necessary due to the physical constraints of the site, such as size, shape, topography, soils, or arrangement of existing improvements that prevent the construction in accordance with the applicable standards without compromising the intent of this ordinance, and that the exception is the minimum departure from the acceptable standards necessary to provide relief. The applicant states that the exception is necessary due to the physical size, which prevents the installation of the required landscape strip and the necessary site improvements. Number 2 is that the exception would not unreasonably lower the level of service of the affected roads. The applicant states that the exception will not lower the level of service on Kings Highway, and the required number of trees and shrubs will be provided within the reduced buffer. Number 3 is that the design and location of the proposed on-site improvements are compatible with existing development sites contiguous with and near the site of the proposed development. The applicant states that the adjacent parking facilities have similar setbacks and landscape buffers. The proposed on-site improvements are compatible with the contiguous sites near the proposed development. Number 4 is that the granting of the exception will not substantially affect adversely the use of adjacent and neighboring property. The applicant states that the granting of the exception will not adversely affect the use of adjacent and neighboring properties. Number 5 is that the granting of the exception will avoid the unnecessary replacement of existing landscaping and other improvements on the site, if applicable, and will not result in unsafe circulation patterns on the site. The applicant states that the exception will not result in any unsafe circulation patterns on site. And number 6 is that the granting of the exception will not endanger public safety or in any other respect impair the health, safety, comfort, and welfare of the inhabitants of the county. The applicant states that the exception will not endanger the public safety in any respect or impair the health, safety, and comfort and welfare of the inhabitants of the county. Next, The development of the parcel is constrained by the size of the proposed parcel. The applicant has met and exceeded the minimum parking requirements and the stacking lane requirements. The applicant has also provided the required buffers on the east and west side of the property. The applicant plans to mitigate this encroachment by adding 1 additional tree and 30 additional shrubs. The property has other constraints as well. Sheet 2 of the preliminary site plan shows an existing access easement that encompasses the front 35 feet of the property. The applicant has not provided any information or assurances that the easement can be vacated. Without the vacation of the easement, approval from all parties with rights to the easement, the lot would not be able to be developed as proposed. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that approval of the exception be contingent on the vacation or adjustment of the easement described in deed book 305, page 680, and that the additional planting shown on the preliminary site plan be implemented. So with that, the Department of Community Development staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve case number Z 2023-00720 with the condition that the existing access easements be vacated or adjusted prior to site plan approval, and that the applicant provide the additional landscaping as proposed. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. The applicant is also here if you have any questions for them.
Any questions?
Mr. Pancotti, see, you're saying that the size of the site is a constraint?
Yes.
This is a proposed re-subdivision. They're relocating that property line, so wouldn't you say that was a self-imposed constraint?
I would not, in that the location that they're putting the property line is put there so it doesn't affect the approved site plan of the McDaniels Car Wash, because they also have constraints in the required parking and access to those buildings. So I don't know of any other place they can put those lines where both sites would meet ordinance requirements.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, not a lot of discussion.
I don't think I have any. I mean, it looks like they're meeting the plant requirements that are set forth. It matches the rest of the area. I don't have any issues with it.
I'm looking at sheet 3 of the plan. I don't see. I mean, I've read your report. I've read their letter. They say 1 tree. You say 1 tree and 30 shrubs. I don't see anything on the plan that specifies what they're going to do. I don't see a schedule for planting on this plan. I see trip generation and parking. I don't see anything about planting. So how are we going to hold them to what? If it doesn't appear on this plan.
To what's shown graphically on the plan,
Okay. All right. So
which in the landscape buffer is 6 trees and 30 shrubs.
I'm counting. That was an additional 30, wasn't it?
No, it was oh, yes.
It's an additional single tree and an additional 30 shrubs. And there are 40 shrubs or so shown in that buffer.
Yes.
Okay. Well, basically, they're asking for a 30% decrease in the buffer and about a 20% increase in plantings. I think we could get better than that. And I don't agree that it's compatible with adjacent sites. I mean, the site in front of the health department looks like exactly what this ordinance was designed to do. The landscaping in front of the bank is exemplary. I think the only failing along that strip is the post office. but that's federal government. What can we do about that? I mean, I would like to add the contingency that a 30% increase in plantings match the 30% decrease in buffer requirements. I'm looking at 7 trees, and I don't really care what happens to the shrubs. I think understory trees are the more critical component.
Didn't the proper specify 30 additional bushes?
Shrub,
Shrubs, property wide or just in the impacted area?
the buffer,
I think that's satisfactory.
7 trees.
I think you're digging in the weeds, no pun intended.
No, I think I'm trying to make it look like everything. I'm trying to make it look compatible with everything surrounding.
I understand, and I think Lewis's team has done everything that they've done their homework, they've done the research, they've done the work to make sure that it matches the surrounding area. I think we're getting dynamics when you're talking. I mean, you plant 30 bushes today and 10 of them might die tomorrow, you know. So
My major concern, as I said, is the tree plantings.
I think my my only concern with additional shrubbery or bushes would be if it creates an impediment to vision or field of vision as far as ingress or egress, or just if it somehow impacts the line of sight of the vehicles that are coming in and out.
yeah, and I think that would be managed by just annual maintenance of the landscaping itself, keeping it at a minimal level. As long as you're not planting boxwoods that grow 6-7 feet tall.
Ready for a motion?
I'm ready to make a motion to approve the variance. What's the term?
It's an
The exception request as specified in Mr. Brancati's presentation.
Here you have the number.
Number Z2023-00720.
Second.
Was that motion including the contingency? The staff recommended contingency for the easement?
Said as noted in the thing, so it includes the contingency.
That's
Motion.
Is that wording okay? Okay. All right. Yep.
Wait a second.
In favor?
Aye.
Against?
Thank you.
Okay, do we have Community Planning Liaison Officer from Naval Support Facility, South Potomac? Would you like to say a few words?
Good evening. Hi. No, nothing tonight from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearing, no public hearing?
Ready for old business?
Old business.
All right, I will now be presenting a continuation of our March 14th discussion on short-term rentals.
March 14th.
So at the March 14th Planning Commission meeting, staff presented a discussion item on short-term rentals and the proposed regulations in the most recent draft of the new zoning ordinance. In particular, staff asked if the commission wished to amend section 7-3-12, which requires the host or owner of a short-term rental to be the primary resident of the domicile. Before making a decision on removing or keeping this provision, the commission asked staff to look at surrounding counties and those who have adopted such provisions to see how they regulate the use of short-term rentals. So Westmoreland County regulates this use similar to how we currently regulate short-term rentals, and that is that a short-term rental of the entire home to one group or party is no different than the long-term rental of that dwelling and is around or is allowed by right wherever single-family dwelling is allowed as a use. But if someone is renting a part of a house, a guest house, or simply rooms for less than 30 days, it would be considered more along the lines of a tourist home, a bed and breakfast, or a boarding house, how appropriate or as appropriate. These uses are typically allowed only in certain zoning districts or with special exception approval by the Board of Supervisors. Short-term rentals, including the single-family type, are still required in Westmoreland to get business license and pay occupancy tax through the Commissioner of Revenue's office. For Spotsylvania counties, currently there is no zoning regulation for short-term rentals. The Commissioner of Revenue does collect transient lodging tax and sales tax for such uses. The Spotsylvania Board has recently expressed a desire to regulate the use, and staff is currently working on presenting options for the Board's consideration in the near future. The Board is primarily focused on occupancy limits, fire safety, and overtaxed septic system. Especially as related to the impacts to Lake Anna. To date, there is no draft ordinance. Loudoun County is currently in the process of amending its ordinance. The most recent draft separates the use into two categories, short-term rental as a principal use and short-term rental as an accessory use. So as a principal use, this involves the rental of the entire house and is classified as a commercial use. This is permitted by special exception in some zoning districts and by right in others. For the accessory use, the short-term rentals are permitted by right as long as they're accessory to the residential use and comply with the additional use standards. One of these standards is a residency requirement that states that the operator must occupy the dwelling unit for a minimum of 185 days. The principal use regulations do not include this requirement. Louisa is also in the process of amending its ordinance. The use would be permitted by right in all agricultural and residential districts and by conditional use permit in all commercial and industrial district. The amendment does propose use standards, which includes limitations on occupancy, parking requirements, and regular septic inspections, among others. It also requires that the operator submit a property management plan with the registration that it provides to all guests with the county code provisions for noise, solid waste, special occasion facilities, and gatherings. There is, however, no proposed operator residency requirement at this time. The City of Norfolk has recently adopted an ordinance regulating short-term rentals. A conditional use permit is required under certain circumstances and performance standards do apply. The ordinance also does not propose a residency requirement for operators. And lastly, the county attorney's office has prepared a report for the use. I did include that in your packet for the consideration of the Planning Commission. The report contains proposed revisions to the draft that the commission may want to consider, as well as other aspects of the use that the commission may want to explore, including, and these include reducing the number of days from 92 to 30 to be considered a short-term rental, excluding certain people from the registration requirements, such as realtors, re-examining the residency requirement, occupancy limit, septic inspections, inclusion of safety equipment, parking requirements, management requirements, and advertisement requirements. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, well, I like lots of different things from lots of different areas. That's me. I liked the idea that, the resident or renters show up and they get handed the package of, hey, not loud, not crazy. This is how it is around here. I'm kind of torn between the 90-ish days and the 30 days just because of the base. Folks that come here and their courses could be anywhere from
I'd like to see what the rationale for
6
that
months.
is. Is rationale for that first bullet, reducing the number of days?
Yeah, I can explain that. So the state regulates short-term rentals in a statute, and the statute restricts the number of days that short-term rental can be considered a short-term rental to 30 consecutive days. But it does allow for renewals. A person could renew it.
Right, that's consecutive days.
Yes.
Not total
It's
days.
just consecutive for
Yeah.
the one reservation.
Yeah.
That can be renewed.
I think it's all logical, given, I mean, I know, Louis, you mentioned it, some of the challenges they've had at Lake Anna. And we're not dissimilar in that we're basically right bordered on north and south by rivers. And so septic concerns are definitely something to worry about. Obviously parking, to Mr. Moss's point, more parking, more noise, those types of things, advertising requirements. I mean, I don't see anything unreasonable about any of it, quite honestly.
Yeah, and then my only other question is, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I'm not sure I'm for a lot of ordinances in this department. I mean, I look at the fact that people want to rent their whole home, a room, a tent, a cottage on their property. And so you're looking at lots of different applications of it. And that you already have state laws that regulate it. You already have homeowners associations. You already have noise ordinances that can deal with, some of the problems that do come with these situations. But I don't see us necessarily as a destination location. We have, from what I could find, 20 to 30 listings in our county. So my question is, how much is it actually impacting us?
I consider this area and the arc of development is either high density suburban or it's going to be recreational, tourism, agricultural. I think we prefer the latter. So the tourism part, I'd like to hear from the county's tourism people and the economic development people on any specific changes we make. Now, I agree. I think as a body, we need to decide whether we want to promote short-term rentals through regulation or do we want to hinder them by regulation. I think that's the philosophical decision that has to be answered first.
That goes to my comment with intent. So what's the intent? Are we trying to have
Encourage or discourage, or encourage smartly or discourage?
and are we looking to allow, small businesses to develop with multiple units and that they own, they don't live in?
It could be. I think of places like Sanibel Island. I think of Martha's Vineyard. I think of the North Shore. I mean, the Long Island. We have the same kind of trends, pressures, forces influencing decisions we make now that will impact people 50, 75 years from now. The places that encourage tourism and agritourism and fishing, hunting do better. So I will admit my biases towards supporting that side. And the second thing is our big economic drivers, short of the dump, is the base. And every E6 who lives in Spotsylvania because there's no available housing here is $2,500 a month, $3,000 per individual per year, times 1,000 students, E5s, E7s. They live there because there is no listings here. There's only 25 listings in the county because it's only permitted under extreme conditions. And I think both the Dahlgren district has a housing, has a housing challenge and an opportunity. So maybe exceptions or specific districts in the county, it can be more or less accommodating, inconsistent with their strategic plan. But the decision we need to make is to encourage or discourage transient housing. Now, this is not 1930. This is not the Dust Bowl. We're not trying to keep revenuers and bootleggers out. We're trying to encourage people to come in.
I guess I don't have a problem with short-term rentals, but I think you're maybe overstating the base. I mean, if you've got an E6, he's either single, and if he's only coming for, a couple of weeks to a couple of months, he's probably not uprooting his family if he's married. Because they come here to go to school, and then they go back to their normal assignment or on to their next assignment.
It's true. I mean, I agree. We're not talking about nuclear family units, but our BAH, you know what it is here per month for an E5?
Off the top of my head, no.
$2,500. This year is a big bump, and it went up and shocked me too. So there are longer schools. There are permanent party at the base. There is expertise, money, talent, civilian workers who live in La Plata and in.
So the longer schools, though, they're looking for longer rentals, not short term. I don't have a problem with a 90-day short-term rental kind of an agreement. I don't feel the need to reduce it down to 30, but I am looking at these short-term rentals as the headaches that come in, and that's what I want to stop. Not the idea that they're there, but as long as they respect the number of occupants, for septic systems.
Yep.
And, I mean, my thought is I don't want to see one of these turn into some kind of party house. And that's where I think most of the objections come from.
And that's part of the tension between the tourism. I think most people would want to come here for the quiet and respect. They're not going to go to Oak Beach or they might. But nightlife and entertainment is and partying at your VRBO is what people do.
And I don't know that necking from 92 days to 30 is going to impact tourism, because I don't know that many people go on 92-day vacations in King George.
Council explained it perfectly, and I think that's a reasonable control. But separating the two populations, the transient personnel from the base, transient personnel, a lot of students, interns, highly educated people. I mean, these are not farm workers who are flowing through on the way to dig peanuts out of.
So my experience in the Navy was when you went to school, you were also provided on-base housing. Do they not have like what do they call them? Dorms or whatever for the students any longer?
I think this would be a great discussion to have with the base housing personnel and how they view their needs.
So my point is, I think we're stretching the military aspect of it a little bit, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. To Mr. Parker's point, I mean, what is it in King George that's drawing people to want to stay 30, 90 days? It's not like, it's not like a Virginia Beach or a Myrtle Beach.
It's not a question about the days or the regulations just what are you trying to accomplish by regulation?
Correct.
Would you regulate less of it? Or are we trying to regulate it in? I mean, that's the function of regulation.
And that's the bottom line.
Well, I think you have to go back to how this came about. We have nothing in our current ordinance for short-term rental, correct? Right now, there's nothing? Right, there's nothing right now. Okay. So this came about on the rewrite of the zoning ordinance.
Yes. Sorry.
So really, if we wanted to, we could just take this out. I don't know. I don't know what, is there a need for it right now, or is there, I mean, right now, I don't even know that we understand the scope of what's out there. You looked at listings and said there were 30 listings, but I see all of the hotels on 301 that aren't operating as hotels necessarily. Are they short-term or long-term, or are they, I don't know.
So one of the main reasons to have them in the zoning ordinance is so that we can at least collect transient tax for them and maintain a registry of those short-term rentals in the county. It is one of those newer uses that a lot of zoning ordinances in the state are trying to, play catch up with, as it typically happens with newer uses. So these are some regulations that Berkeley Group has seen. They, again, may not necessarily fit exactly what we're looking for. And the main reason this was brought before you again is because of that residency requirement that the operator of a short-term rental has to live there for more than half of the year in order to have a short-term rental. And we've seen a lot of citizens in the county or people interested in owning property in the county be discouraged by that. If they're to buy, multiple properties, they want to be able to have that option to rent those properties out short-term without having that be their primary residence.
This is information. Not positional in the sense.
Well, you could direct us to have Berkeley Group remove anything or add anything. I would advise to keep it to simple changes at this point to the draft ordinance, because anything major like looking at it again.
This draft ordinance, and what is this?
These were recommendations from the county attorney.
So these were some things I felt we could possibly include into the short-term rental ordinance that Berkeley drafted. Yeah, these are not in there now.
That's kind of hard to see. But.
I just wanted to say that I think the reason that this is coming out across the country is because you have areas we recently visited last year, Sedona, and all the houses in that town are becoming short-term rentals, and the people that work there can't afford to live there. And so you have a lot of places where with our housing crisis, people are buying these homes, they can make much more money renting them out short-term. I don't know that that's the case here. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that the Airbnb and some of its hosts are currently suing New York City for the ordinances that they have come up with against short-term rentals. So this could be an issue that's in litigation over the next couple of years.
Well, I'm not afraid of doing an ordinance just because the county might get sued. Right. I think there's a reasonableness there. I think it's within our rights to put down some guidelines for operators. I don't have a problem with an owner buying a piece of property in a county, maybe along the rivers, one of the two rivers, and doing it purely for the sake of renting it out 100% of the time. I don't have an issue with that. But I do think the comment that was made, short-term rentals tend to get expensive, and your local folks probably are not going to be using them, for long-term living. So that doesn't address our need for affordable housing in the county, or even just reasonable available rental units. Short-term, if you ever tried to rent something short-term, they're not generally cheap.
Well,
my biggest concern is that, I'm fine with operating some of them. I don't think we've got so many yet that we need to worry about.
Right.
I'm not sure there's that many available structures, lots along the two rivers that you could even develop very many of. I guess like I said, I don't have a problem with somebody having a building that they want to use for short-term rentals. My concern is, I I don't want to see somebody come in and say they're renting it for 3 people and there wind up being 20 in there. You know, I don't, 3 people, you assume that they only bring 1 or 2 vehicles. I don't want to see 10 vehicles. As long as they respect the noise ordinance that we now have, I mean, I don't have a lot of issues, but I do think we need to have something on the books that lays out some general guidelines. Not so restrictive that we discourage them, but just so that we express the things that we don't want to see happen.
So specifically, I mean, that was generalities about bullet points, but now it seems how can we communicate to the board recommending that, say, septic guidelines be developed, 1. 2, the residency requirement, I think, speaks directly to Mr. Kendrick's thing. Should we allow someone to buy someone to own a single family home and rent it to third parties as, we'll talk about, VRBOs or those kinds of things without a residency requirement?
No, I think we want to register.
Right.
requirement.
I think
We
that,
know
yeah.
where they are and how many there are.
Could you put the recommended
Be
list? back
someone
up,
that the
please?
owner has to live on site for 185 days.
No,
I think it's,
I think
No.
around, I mean, I get the sense that around here, and this is just my personal feeling, is that you're going to have folks. I mean, I know a couple of folks who like winter in Florida.
oh yeah, absolutely.
And to give them the opportunity to rent out their house while they're renting something themselves somewhere else, I don't have a problem with that. But I also don't have a problem with somebody buying a piece of property and trying to operate it purely as a short-term rental all year round. I don't think we've reached a point where the number of them is going to be an issue. Maybe later, but
So we have agreement that septic guidelines, happy to hear what public.
On septic guidelines, I don't know that there's a good way to find out or enforce a septic guideline. The only way you could go about that. So my thoughts on it are you go back to 30 days, you get rid of the restriction that the owner has to live there. And if you wanted some kind of septic guideline, you could put number of people per bedroom. So 3 people per bedroom, that's a defined space if you wanted to regulate that. But I'm all for as little regulation as you can, because I think we're getting ourselves in some area that we're not familiar with.
I tend to agree. I don't want to make it onerous, and I don't want to see it become some large unwieldy thing, but just some general guidelines like you're suggesting. I mean, right now, sewage approval or sewage, on-site sewage systems are done by bedrooms. So you do define in terms of number of people for a short-term rental. That way you can control it that way. Something simple like that. I'm fine with that.
3 people per bedroom would be 9 people in a 3-bedroom house, which is a lot, right? I think that's probably fair.
Typically, it's 2 people per bedroom is what I've seen other ordinances look at. So I would recommend we take away the primary resident requirement, that we add a occupancy requirement, 2 people per bedroom. And then the only other thing that I thought was going to be just a headache all around is the 3 or more substantiated complaints. You could suspend or cancel the business's ability to operate. The only problem I have about that is that, we're back to things like data centers. If we're not going to hold a data center to that criteria, I don't see how we can hold another small business to that criteria. Are we going to shut down other businesses if they have 3 or more consecutive complaints? So I just think that whatever we do, it should be consistent.
We're talking about residentially zoned areas. I'm trying to make this work in those.
I understand. I just think we already have noise ordinances. And so I think we should apply the penalty that would be normal for any other noise issue. So a fine or whatever the ordinance is for noise.
So if I may, I think what we're hearing consensus is that we want to remove the residency requirements. We want to add a occupancy max according to the septic system, or a maximum of 2 persons per bedroom. We can do that through the permitting process. Now that we have added this in our new ordinance, it will now have a permit requirement and will be on a case-by-case basis. So if you are a sewer connected single family dwelling, then your max occupancy is per your certificate of occupancy, as well as your sewer capacities. If you are on a private drain field and it says you can only have a 2-person occupancy, that is all that you will be able to rent it out as. So we will be able to regulate that in that fashion. So I think we can make some simple changes that will get the goal of what the commission's saying here tonight. Did I forget anything?
No, I'm good with that, but I do have one other question. The second line down, bullet down, excluding certain people from the registering requirements. Would you define that?
Yeah, so just to go back to what Heather was mentioning before I get to your question, some ordinances I've seen will say that for the occupancy limit, they'll limit it by person, by bedroom. So they may say 2 people per bedroom as a way to limit how many people are in the household. And regarding parking, some places I've seen, they'll require the host to have 1 parking spot available per, how many people are there. So it might be 1 spot per 2 people, 1 spot per 3 people, as a way to reduce how many cars are there, and for guests to know exactly where they can and cannot park, so that way they're not parking on someone else's property or off street where they can't park. And so to get to your registration requirement, the state code does restrict localities' ability to force certain people to register. And those people are generally realtors, people who are in the real estate, people who operate hotels. So that's something built into the state code.
Can we have something that requires the advertisement of these short-term rentals to include, some of the stuff that's going to be in the ordinance?
That is up to you all. If there are certain things that you want to see in advertisements, I have that bullet point added on there so you can discuss.
I think that having, when somebody presents the business, that we can set guidelines that basically say all of your guests need to be informed of the noise ordinance, whatever things that we want them to be aware of. And when you're using these apps, it's very easy for the host to put that information into the app and for the guest to be able to consent to their knowledge of it.
If I can butt in again, that kind of goes to the management requirements that I have listed there, where you can require the host to provide certain information to the guests. So one of the things I was thinking of was garbage disposal. So guests know where they can throw their trash away. Hosts are responsible to tell the guests where they can throw their trash away, where they can park, notifying them of any noise ordinance requirements. So basically we can have the host or whoever's managing the property tell guests what they can and cannot do.
I'm good with those.
I'm good.
Secret ballot.
All right, we will relay that back to the Berkeley group. Thank you.
I get
So was the consensus on removing the residency requirement and adding in a limit based on the septic permit or 2 persons per bedroom?
Or per the drain field.
Yeah.
And occupancy.
Yeah, occupancy.
And I believe the third was the complaints will equal revocation of their permit to operate. Do we want to include that?
Keep it in, leave it out. Leave it in, keep it out.
Yeah. Maybe adults. We don't count minors.
And that too could go to the management piece where you get too loud. We gave you all the ordinance. told you what's it about, what it was about. They can just
Right.
terminate their time there, say you've exceeded the ordinance, you're out. It's probably an ordinance against burying them in the backyard, bro.
I think most of those apps limit the number of people anyway on them. The owners probably want to keep it somewhere. The only thing I was thinking about on the 2 per bedroom was a 2-bedroom that has a family of 5. Someone sleeping on the couch or whatever, but do you want to limit that or not?
Some of the things that I've seen limited to 2 adults. So that depends on if you like that language or not.
It may be ideal to link the occupancy to the actual septic permit because there are also a lot of conditional permits in the county that, although they have a 6-person drain field, they may have limitations on the number of users that are allowed on their conditional septic permit.
Is the septic per person or per bedroom though?
It's typically per bedroom, but you can get a conditional, like say I have a 4-bedroom house, but a 3-bedroom perk, I can get a conditional permit that limits the occupancy of that house to 6 people as opposed to 8, even though I have that extra bedroom.
Okay.
Good. All right.
New business.
No new business.
Yes, Lisa from Northern Neck Land Conservancy sends her regrets. She is ill and was unable to present tonight. So next up is the director's report, if you're ready. Okay.
We're ready.
You may have noticed that we have a new look to your packets with the hiring of our new communications and community engagement coordinator. The county is undergoing a new branding. So this is temporary. This is a temporary upgrade. There may be some changes in the upcoming months, but I think it looks pretty nice. I hope you agree. If you have any feedback, we will certainly pass that along to Amy Southall.
I like it. Did it come with a commensurate pay increase for planning commission members?
That's a loaded question. I didn't get a pay increase. But no.
But no.
But no. In May 2023, we did 15 new single-family dwellings, 86 permits for a total revenue of $51,096. Our new projects include Potomac Commons, which is Mr. Fox's project, and Gateway Shopping Center with access off of University Drive. The project will include a brewery, restaurant, fast food restaurant, and retail sales. You also included in your packet was the zoning ordinance overhaul minutes from May 30th. If you have any corrections. Hearing none, we will send that back to Berkeley with no corrections. Next is other business.
Hello. So we have received a variance request by Telecom Capital Group LLC for a telecommunication facility. It's a 195-foot monopole with a 4-foot lightning rod. The reason they're asking for a variance is because they are proposing the tower within the 100-foot setback from the east and western property lines on the site. The ordinance requires that on property lines that are adjacent to agricultural zoning districts require a 100-foot setback. So they will be encroaching 22.4 feet to the east and 21.9 feet towards the west. So Mr. Dines, you can scroll down and show that's a location on St. Paul's Road. And you can scroll down to the next page. Yep. Oh, there you go. Oh, zoom out. So variance requests are heard and decided by the Board of Zoning Appeals. They will hold a public hearing on June 27th to hear this case. This is being brought to you today because Section 15.2-2310 of the Code of Virginia requires that the zoning administrator transmit a copy of all variance applications to the Planning Commission, which may send a recommendation to the BZA or appear as party at the hearing. If approved, this will still be required to go through the special exception process because it is in the A2 zoning district. And that's all I have.
That'll require a public hearing too, right?
Yes.
Yes, so this at this point is for informational purposes only, unless the commission decides to forward a recommendation. I'm sure you're aware we don't get a whole lot of variances, so this is probably the first time Planning Commission has received this informational product.
I don't ever remember one.
But yes, assuming if the variance were to be approved, the special exception will still appear before the Planning Commission unless the board decides to retain the application. But traditionally, they send it to the Planning Commission for a recommendation to the board, and they will hold 2 public hearings on that special exception.
Make sure it's not at the firehouse.
Noted.
Just for information, locating these transmission facilities, the telecom facilities on county-owned land is a winner for a lot of counties. It's a revenue center. It solves a lot of permitting things. I don't know if we have a process for either encouraging them. Might be an economic development thing or our committee on county property usage.
We actually have quite a few on our water towers and leases, so.
We do.
Yes, sir.
But no monopoles, no freestanding.
Not that come directly to mind. Typically, they want to use structures that are already there rather than duplicate.
Were there any proffers included with this?
Proffers are not typical of a variance request.
Oh, it's just a variance.
The board of Zoning Appeals can impose conditions on a variance, and there will also be conditions associated with the special exception.
Okay, I guess with the special exception, maybe they would.
Is the BZA
Like
meeting a
county
public
use
meeting
or something like
Yes.
You want a fire truck?
and publicly advertised?
county use.
Yes, sir.
Fire truck.
Any more discussion on this?
Is that for you?
I do have discussion on adjournment before you beat me to the punch. Ready? With July is July 4th, and so the Board of Supervisors moved their meeting from the first Tuesday on the holiday to the second Tuesday. So we have 2 tentative projects for July, and our proposal is to move that meeting to the July 18th, which is technically the 3rd Tuesday rather than the 2nd Tuesday. We do have 2 projects who are hoping to be on the agenda, but I need confirmation.
We can just approve them now in advance. We approve everything anyway.
And there are 2 public hearings, correct? 2 separate.
One will actually be another exception like you heard tonight, but for a subdivision. Another one is a possible rezoning, which would be a public hearing. So eat your Wheaties next month.
Del Toro.
So everybody will be here in attendance on July 18th.
That's the date that our raise becomes effective.
19. 19.
That's above my pay grade.
We have a motion to adjourn until July 18th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Right.